Sean guy, and we'll unmute him in a minute. And we also have the clubby, Eric Razin, will be on the call. So that last 20 minutes or so of the program, we're going to get the scorebook from Sean Ford, and we're going to break it down. And we're going to talk about the game as it progressed, because Sean told me something that I never knew about that game other than the hiccup in the ninth inning and how that was related to somebody on the team. And we're going to talk about all that later. But first, I want to get an opportunity to talk to you because, you know, when you were with us, you could tell that you were a special pitcher, because we've seen enough guys that when you watch them pitch, you know they have whatever the word it is, and you had it. Big, tall, you threw hard, had good breaking stuff. And you were here. And so first of all, other than the big moment, what are your memories of the Renegades and the 2000 season in Hudson Valley?
Oh boy, it's impossible to dial it down into one memory. You know, I had such a good time. As you said, it was a unique team. We had plenty of ups and a lot of downs that year. I can't remember our record, but either way, the fans were super supportive. Even though I'll just say we weren't in first place from the start. You know, the fans, first of all, I think they made it special. You know, the support that you get in Hudson Valley is it's second to none, really. And you know, going up there, we knew what we were getting into. We had you know, former players come and tell us how lucky we are to play in Hudson Valley. And, you know, just going there, I agree with them. It was an amazing experience. The fans made it some of the best. You know, our host parents that I had, Jane and Al, you know, we're still close to them. Just the fact that we got to hang out with them, get to know them over the course of that summer, that was amazing. And then on the baseball field, you know, we had a lot of memories, man. It was a lot of fun. I definitely learned a lot. I do remember, out of everything, I remember that Hudson Valley probably has the best mound in professional baseball to throw on, because I'm pretty sure that mound, I was about 10 feet tall when I stood on it. The slope might have been just a little bit higher than other mounds. I don't know. I'm not going to say that for sure, but I do remember pitching there, and I loved it. My curveball had about 6 extra inches to drop.
Well, let me tell you, honestly, pitchers needed a chairlift to get to that thing. In fact, years later, I'm sure you ran into Dick Baseman with the organization. When he became our pitching coach, he had an absolute heart attack. He took one look at that thing and said, I don't care. It's 2 days before opening day. He made him tear it down and start from scratch. So that mound today is nowhere near as tall as it was when you were there. Because how tall are you? 6'5", 6 in that neighborhood?
Well, on the books, I'm 6'5", but, you know, I'm also about 215 pounds on the books. And I think both those numbers are just a little bit incorrect.
I'll tell you what, when a guy your size gets on that mound and you let that fastball go, it looks like you're about 51 feet away from the guy by the time you let it go. So, yeah, we had an incredible mound. And the weird thing about that team is we had the worst home record in all of professional baseball that year. We only won 8 games. In fact, if you remember correctly, we petitioned management with the Rays to do a swap where we made you guys, since you played so well on the road, where you would do a home game as the visitors, and you guys would be the K-man, and we were gonna blow it up and have fun. The league said yes, the other team said yes, but the brass at the Rays were having none of it. They would not let us do that. You guys would have had fun with that.
We would have had a lot of fun with it. I mean, in a year that I'll just say it was a little tough for us statistically, you know, thinking outside the box, trying to go that reroute. You know, I'm surprised toward the end of the year we didn't just go ahead and do it.
Well, we only wanted to do it. It was the last home series of the year is when we wanted to do it. And like I said, New York Penn League said yes. The team we were going to play against said yes. They thought it was funny. Your crazy skipper said yes, but the big bosses said absolutely not. They wanted no part of it. So let's talk about that crazy skipper. He kept you entertained, didn't he?
Oh yeah, Dave Silvestri. He kept us entertained before we even got to Hudson Valley. I think it was we were in extended spring training, and he might have been the only manager to get thrown out of multiple spring training games going into a short season. So you know, he was intense. He was a guy who liked to win. And, I definitely remember him to this day. I mean, he's the type of guy that would get there early, and he would have no shortage on pep talks. And most of the pep talks you pretty much couldn't say on the air
Yeah,
because he had some colorful language.
I thought it was hard on him because he had played in the major leagues. Wasn't it the year before?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he was only
And
removed
then
from the
all of a
big leagues
sudden,
maybe a year or two, and so he was definitely
yeah,
coming
so,
right out of the chute.
and he still played well his last year.
Right. And I think, with Dave, I think part of the frustration for him was because he got to such a high level and he played so well. He had such a great career. And then he goes back and he sees some guys who probably weren't on the same, mental approach that he had, the intensity, the drive to win. And I think some of the guys on our team probably didn't share that. And that's where a lot of his frustration came from. And, it really started spilling out toward the middle part and the end part of that season.
Yeah, and if you remember correctly, he ended up getting thrown out of that last game, and the league said, "You know what, Dave? Why don't you go home, play some golf, and relax because you're not going back to the dugout anytime soon."
Yeah, they went ahead and gave him an early break for winter. And so I remember, I think it was the last homestand, they said, you know
Yeah,
what? You're good, man. You put in your time. Go enjoy the family a little early.
yeah. I think his offense that time was you guys. I think we're playing in Brooklyn or Staten Island, and he had bumped the base umpire literally from the base all the way down the right field line, almost to the wall. And the Penn League said, enough of that.
Yeah, you know what? In the Hudson Valley and in the Penn League, I think they frown upon body checks. I think they want to keep that in the hockey arena. So yeah, I think that that move was partly, allowing him to relieve some stress at home, and then partly they just wanted to make sure the umpires were safe before he goes and takes the field again.
So let's talk about you leave us, and hopefully you had a good time and you had some great memories that you still have with you. And as you're working your way to the big leagues, give me a synopsis of what that journey from when you left us to right got to the big leagues, and then we'll talk about the call up.
Okay, yeah. Well, the next year I went to Charleston, South Carolina, and actually I remember you guys. I was able to fly back in for the reunion of my no hitter, and I threw out the first pitch. That's where I think you got that ball signed. There it is, and I remember that like it was yesterday. I remember playing catch with the team, and this was the year after I played with Hudson Valley. I remember flying back in, playing catch with the team. Tom Foley was there, our field coordinator. He was there for the ceremony, and I just remember talking to him how special it was being able to go out there and celebrate something on that field and in a place that I had so many good memories. But after that, so Charleston was my next year, and then I actually repeated the start of the following year in Charleston. And that was the year I jumped 3 organizations. So I went from Charleston, South Carolina to Bakersfield, California. And then from Bakersfield, California, I went to AA Orlando, Florida. And that was all in one season. And that was by far one of my better seasons. It was like something just clicked for me. It was one of those times where my mechanics all came together, the mental approach came together, and all the stuff that I had been learning up to that point finally settled in and came together for me. And really, I exploded up. And then the following year, went to Durham. And after that, we got the call up.
Who told you that you were going to the bigs?
So it's probably a funny story. So I was actually in my I was in my apartment room, and my roommate was Matt Diaz. He was a former Hudson Valley Renegade also, and
He
so
got to the big.
yeah, yeah. So I was there by myself. I think Matt was over at a movie or something. We had the night off, and my phone was ringing, but it was an unlisted number, and so I wasn't really picking it up. And so finally, Matty comes through the door and he's like, "Hey, man, you got to pick your phone up. I think somebody's trying to call you." I said, "Yeah, no problem." So I look at the number. I called the number back, and it was Bill Evers, our skipper. And he was a manager, longtime manager for AAA. And he picks up the phone. And he says, "Hey, Waechter how you feel? I was like, I feel great. And at that point in time, I was throwing really well. And he says, well, maybe you should have answered the first time because I really wanted to tell you that your next start is going to be in the big leagues. And so from that point on, man, I mean, instantly I started tearing up. My next phone call was to my mom and my family. And, I remember telling them, I remember walking around my apartment in Durham and on the phone telling them that, I'm flying out there. I'm flying to Seattle. I'm going to meet the team. And, my next start, I'm going to be facing guys like Ichiro and Edgar Martinez. And best experiences, most exciting experiences, most anxious. I mean, everything you can wrap up emotionally into one moment. That's how I felt.
All right, so you get to the big leagues, you walk into the clubhouse for the first time with major leaguers, and what was that very first moment when you walked in that clubhouse and you knew that you belonged?
Well, I didn't know I belonged. I knew I was there. It took me a while before I really settled in and felt like I belonged. But, I remember going in there and getting dressed, and I knew I wanted to get into the clubhouse, but I really wanted to get on the field as quick as I could because I felt like if I could get onto the field, I'd recognize the fact that, it's the same dimensions, it's the same game that I've been playing for my whole life, and maybe that'll settle me in just a little bit. So I can remember going from the dugout actually it'd be from the clubhouse in Seattle. And the way you walk out from the clubhouse is that you walk down steps and you walk into the dugout and then you walk up into the field. All right. So when I walked into the dugout, you could only see the roof was up, right here. So you couldn't see the higher levels. So all you could see is the lowest level of the entire Safeco Field Stadium. Right. And so I walk out there, I'm like, okay, it's big, but it's not too crazy. I'll be okay. I take the next step up and then I see a whole nother tier of the stadium. And, there's another, 15, 20,000 people. And I'm like, okay, you know what? It's getting pretty big here. This is a real deal. And then I finally take a step onto the actual surface and I do a 360. And I mean, to me, it was like a cathedral. And you're looking around and your heart starts pumping out of your chest and you start walking on the clay. And, it's a feeling like it's really hard to explain. It's the culmination of, at that point, it was 22 years of my life I'd been dreaming of one moment and it all hit you at once. And so, the whole time you're thinking, all right, just keep it together. You still got to pitch, because at the end of the day, I mean, you're going out there and you got a job to do. So as exciting as it was, as nerve wracking as it was, at the end of the day, you just try to focus and say, all right, it's the same game. Let's try to go out there and get the job done.
All right, so how long did you have to wait before you got on the bump?
So the first day they set me up and I was an extra arm in the bullpen. So it was the first day. Lou Pidella's the manager, and I barely talked to him at all. And so I go out to the bullpen, go through the first game. I don't get the call. And so I'm walking back in, and it was one of those times where, everybody else, almost everybody in that bullpen got the call to go in that game. So I had a feeling that the next day, obviously I had a really good chance of getting in. So I remember waking up, going out to the bullpen. And, when that phone rang, I was just ready to roar. And so it was the second day. I was up in the big leagues. They got me up. They got me going. And I think in the bullpen, I was throwing as hard as I could because I just could not physically slow myself down. And so I'm letting it fly in the bullpen. And then I can remember, they called me into the game and the gates swing open. And as I run through that left field, the bullpen's in left field at Safeco. As I run through the gates, I remember seeing the whole stadium open up to me. It was packed house. It was like 40,000+ people there. Lou Piniella standing on the mound, and my whole team's just waiting for me to run up to the mound. And so I'm going out there, and real quick story, I'm going out there, and I'm thinking in my head, all right, when I get there, I want to show Piniella that, I'm not scared of the situation. Like, I really want to give him this stare that I'm like, okay, man, I'm ready for this, right? And so I get on the mound and I give him this look that in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is a gamer look, right? I'm ready to take this ball from him. So I go out there, pitch well, and the next day I'm reading the paper just to see if there's any kind of reaction. And so I'm reading through the paper, and one of the reporters asked Lou Piniella. They said, "Hey, what were your first impressions of Waechter?" And I can read it verbatim, and it said basically, "Oh, well, when he got to the mound, he looked at me like it was a deer in headlights, and he was terrified. But luckily, I gave him the ball. He threw extremely well, and I'm looking forward to his next start." And so when I read that, I was like, all right, man, I'm done with giving this intimidation look. I'm just going to take the ball and just let it fly.
Can you hear me?
There you go. Yep, gotcha.
You muted
Okay.
yourself accidentally.
Well, yeah, I actually fell off the call for a while. I missed the last part of his answer, and he was laughing. So I said, "Man, I missed something good." So, name the superstar that was in the big leagues in those days, and give me a couple of them. And how did you do against them?
Oh man, I mean, look, I was going against guys. I was in the AL East, so the Yankees roster was basically Derek Jeter, Alfonso Soriano, Gary Sheffield, Jason Giambi, Alex Rodriguez. These are the top 4 or 5 hitters in their lineup. I think Jorge Posada was like 7 or 8. Bernie Williams was in that lineup. So, looking back, it was a tall task. I mean, I was pitching against Roger Clemens, Randy Johnson, these guys, and that was just all on one team. Then you go to, you can go over to Boston. They had Manny Ramirez when he was hitting 35, 40 home runs a year and a 350, 340 average. David Ortiz was crushing the baseball, and pretty much every lineup that I faced had guys that were in the 40 home run range. So, these guys were very special. There was a lot of talent when I broke in. And, going back even to my first game, it was Edgar Martinez was the first guy I faced. And I was able to strike him out. I still got the ball from that, but that's a Hall of Famer right there that I have a ton of respect for. Ichiro Suzuki. I mean, that guy, he was another guy who I got to face a good amount. And, one of the weirdest feelings, but best feelings of getting to the big leagues is that a lot of these guys who stick around for a while, they're guys that you rooted for coming up through the minor leagues, and you love watching them on TV, and you're watching them all hit highlights every single night. These guys are hitting home runs. And then all of a sudden the next day you're facing them and you got to try to get these guys out. So it's an interesting feeling the first, go around in the big leagues until you can get really comfortable and feel like you belong there. And after that, it's kind of, I wouldn't say smooth sailing, but it's at least a little bit easier on the mental side to feel like you can go out there and get the job done.
Well, a couple more quick things before we get to the special night in 2000. You hear that cliche all the time, and maybe you can explain it to the folks who are listening, that it's easy to get to the big leagues if you are an excellent player. It's hard to stay in the big leagues. Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you get to the big leagues, a lot of times guys can get there, I wouldn't say on 100% talent, but if you have outstanding stuff, like say you're a pitcher, you have outstanding qualities, outstanding stuff, you're a guy who can bring it 95 to 100 miles an hour and you can throw strikes, well, then your chances of getting to the big leagues for even a day, rather small, but you can still get there, right? But staying there is the hardest part because the game is a game of adjustments. And you have to be both physically, mentally, and emotionally ready to make adjustments on all parts of your game. And really, the most talented guys, if they don't have it between the ears, they won't be able to stay up there. The game is so hard on you when it comes to failure because every single guy is going to fail. And when you fail, you don't just fail and you can walk away and never hear about it again. I mean, when you fail, it's in the papers, it's on ESPN, it's on all these networks. And you got to live with the fact that everybody knows you just failed, but you have a chance to go redeem yourself, whether it's the next day, whether it's 4 days later, or, if you're in the lineup next time you get up. So between, just physically holding up, health-wise, between the game of adjustments that you have to make and between, being able to handle the stress of failure at a very, very high level. I think all those wrapped up together is really the main reason that it's so hard to stay in the big leagues.
So let's talk about the fact that you had a nice career for yourself. You had some injuries, but how long? For those who don't know, how long was your career before you had some issues with your arm?
Sure. Yeah, I played. I think I was 4 years in the big leagues, about parts of 4 years in the big leagues before I had my first shoulder surgery, a rotator cuff and labrum. And then I had to work my way all the way back to the big leagues. I was with the Rays at that point in time. And, I rehabbed all my way back, picked up a couple new pitches. Like I just said, I mean, it's a game of adjustments. I had to pick up a new pitch just to get back up to the big leagues. And then when I did, I was with the Marlins and had a couple more years with the Marlins and the Royals before I had another shoulder and elbow surgery. So, I had in the big leagues parts of 6 years, and then overall in professional baseball, I think it was 11 years, right at 11 years. So, I consider myself very blessed to be able to pitch a baseball that long, and for people to be willing to pay for me to be able to do that. I understand how lucky I am to do that, and how lucky I was. And it's something that I look back to, and I never take it for granted. It's just a true blessing that I was able to do it, and I'm so thankful for the people who gave me the opportunity to do that.
So you have a nice career. I don't think anybody would ever argue that. And that pension every day in the big leagues adds up for a little bit more on the back end of that pension. But you get into broadcasting, because I kind of figured when I met you that when you came back that year after and you hung out in the PA booth with us for a little while, I'm like, man, this guy is so well spoken, and he's knowledgeable. He's going to look great on camera. He's got to end up in broadcasting. What was that journey? It's the last thing we're going to talk about before we talk about that night.
Yeah, well, I will tell you that the broadcasting has been great. The only thing I've had to make an adjustment on is the fact that the lights in the studio are so bright. When I got into broadcasting, I told my family, I was like, look, the one thing I'm not going to wear makeup. Like, I'm just not a guy who wears makeup, right? I just never thought about it, right? There's no need. I'm not wearing makeup. And so, I get in the studio for the first time, and you could probably see it now. My head is just glowing like a headlight. And so, I mean, I remember, everybody in the studio is like, look, dude, you got to put makeup on, man. It has nothing, just do it. It doesn't mean you're less manly. Just put the dang makeup on. And so finally I've gotten used to that. I made the adjustment there, able to apply that, no big deal. And I'm very comfortable with it on now. So that's one thing I've had to make an adjustment on. But, aside from that, all joking aside, the broadcasting side of it is something that allows me to go out there, analyze the game, stay a part of the game, and also be a part of my family life. Because as you know, the baseball side of things, when you're in the game, it's very hard. There's a lot of travel. There's a lot of things that go into it. And so broadcasting has enabled me and allowed me to go there and, go on camera, talk about something I love so much, man. I could talk about baseball for hours just because it's something that's in my blood. But also after the shoot is over, after the day's done, most of the time I get to go back home and see my wife and kids and enjoy them. And we get to root on our home team is the Rays. I'm from St. Pete. So we get to root on St. Pete, Tampa Bay Rays. And the fact that I get to broadcast for the team that I got to play for and gave me the opportunity to play, man, it's just such a cool ride. And, I'm very, very thankful for it.
I'm not sure if my internet is acting up again, because I didn't hear any of that last answer. So I'm not sure. Glide, could you shake your hand? Am I still on? Can you still hear me, Steve? Doug, can you got me?
Yeah, you just popped back on for me.
Oh, man. All right, so let's talk about your special night in year 2000. You're in the bullpen. You're getting ready to come in. We do the national anthem. You're on the mound. I introduce you. and then you go out and do something that no other Renegades pitcher has ever done. And you consider at this point, we're 27, 28 years in, and you throw a no-no. So I've got two guests with us. So Morgan, if you can unmute Sean Ford, who was our radio play-by-play guy that year, and also Eric Razin, who was your clubby. And for those who don't understand who the clubby is, the clubby is got to be the worst job in all baseball. Eric's a guy who played baseball in college, great guy, and it's the worst job there is. So I got two guests for you, and we're going to try to get through that night and talk about what happened. So Sean, are you unmuted?
I am here.
Eric,
And Doug, before we get started, I caught up to you after the game and you signed the book. So thanks for that. It's great to see you, by the way. Are you wearing makeup now?
No makeup right now. As
okay.
you can see, this is all me right here.
That's all you. All right. Hey, I tell you, you got to put the pancake on, man. You really do. I mean, you really do. You got no choice. But
got no choice.
Yeah, no choice at all. But thanks for signing the book. And I know it kind of looks like it just came out of the Smithsonian, but it's been hanging around for a long time. It's been moving with me a lot. So.
Well, the fact that, when I found out it was 20 years since I threw that game, first of all, I was like, golly, am I that old? What happened 20 years ago?
You're the only one here who doesn't look that old, by the way.
I feel like it was yesterday when I threw that game. And so, what's funny? I was running through my pitching coach, John Duffy.
Yes, I was trying to remember his name.
Yep, he gave me the scorecard that had all, the entire scorecard from the game. And I remember it was hilarious. He told me that night. He told me that I think I logged in, quote unquote, I was around 118 pitches, which technically that was over the amount of pitches they wanted me to throw the Rays. But then he told me off to the side, he's like, dude, we doctored this up a little bit.
He did. He told me you fudged the numbers.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my arm was telling me that I was at 140, 150.
He told me, the media, 104, and I said, yeah, right. Sure. Yeah, I wasn't counting pitches then. But, yeah, I knew it was a little more than 104. But it was a special night. I can remember it.
Yeah, Duffy said to me, he goes very off the record, Zoles, he was 130 plus.
Yeah,
it had to be. He
didn't say what the plus was, but he said you were north of 130.
Yeah, no, it still feels like that. It feels like I threw 140 pitches that day.
It was a long night and a long season. Let's put it that way. But it was a special night.
Let's take it from the beginning. First, Eric, are you unmuted?
I am.
All right. So first of all, did you notice anything special about Doug and his preparation that night before he took the field?
No, I mean, it was just I felt like it was a typical night, like you guys were talking about. We struggled as a team. We were 23-52 in the end, but it just seemed like a typical day. I went about my business. I got the guys ready, to get out to the field and everything like that, and things started falling into place. And then you kind of happen to look up at the scoreboard and you kind of notice like something special's happening tonight.
All right, so Sean, take us through the first couple of innings. How did he do? And was there anything that took place that in the first couple of innings, can go through inning 3, that may have put the kibosh early?
Well, you and I talked about this yesterday. It was just a game full of anomalies. You already mentioned one. First of all, I don't have to go through the first couple. I'll go through the first 5 because he set down 15 in a row. And he started going through – he went through the first 5 innings, 5 strikeouts. And, he didn't run into any trouble at all until the 6th.
All right, so Doug, you get to that line of demarcation before we get to the 6th. At what point, when you're breezing through the lineup, at what point do you think to yourself, this might be special? Or do you just keep going back out there and just say, line them up, I'm going to knock them down?
No, it was about the 6th or 7th inning. I definitely felt like I was in cruise control to the first 4 or 5. And I remember it. You always remember your special games. There's a couple games that really stand out to me, and this is definitely one of the tops. So I do remember going out there feeling really good with my curveball and locating my fastball pretty well. And I remember that I want to say it was the Mets that I was throwing against, and so I felt like they were swinging early, and so I got through the first 5 innings without too much damage, and my pitch count was relatively low. So after about 5 innings, that's when, you sit back down and you're looking around, you kind of glance at the scoreboard, you see a lot of goose eggs up there, and you start thinking in your head, wondering, hey, I don't know how many people have been on base yet. At that point in time, I'd love to hear if I had walked anybody or if there were some errors, because I know for a fact our team, we did throw the ball around a little bit too. So I want to say, well, I know there was one error, but there might have been more than one error in that game. I don't know if there was any through the first 5, though.
All right, Sean, so what happened in the 6th inning?
Yeah, actually, the Renegades made 2 errors. Well, the 6th inning was a leadoff walk. Sacrifice, moved the runner to second, but then he made I believe, a bit of a mistake there. I think a ball got hit off of Doug. It was a 1-6-5 play at third to erase him. The number 9 batter walked, as they always do, it seems like, in baseball. And then there was a fielder's choice to end the inning. So 2 of the 3 walks you had, Doug, came in the 6th.
Yeah.
And that was probably the worst inning you had.
Right. And honestly, every time that a player goes through and has a game, a special game, a lot of times a few things happen. There's always that one inning that you got to really battle through and kind of hold it together. And if you can do that, you tend to get right back on track. And then there's always somebody out there that makes a really special play for you. And, those 2 things always tend to happen in these special types of games. So I know that, it did sound like the 6th inning was one of the struggles. But after you get through that and you're able to sit down, you get yourself, relaxed, refreshed a little bit, and try to go out there and get some quick outs moving forward.
All right, so Sean, as he wraps up the 6th inning and we're coming up to bat, what's the score at that point?
The score at that point is actually 1-0 Renegades, because in the bottom of the 5th inning, Alex Marconi hit a 2-out home run. And
right, so
that was a funny situation, too, because I can remember the Mets pitcher had struck out the first 2 Renegades. Marconi got up, and he got up on the count, 2-0. And I remember tapping Bruce Rose, my color commentator, on the left arm. And I remember pointing out to the left field fence and doing this. And sure enough, the 2-0 pitch was a fastball that was grooved right over the middle, and Alex knocked it over the left field fence.
All right, so we'll talk about Alex in a few moments.
Yeah.
About how he also played.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah, I mean, it was just a game of anomalies. And I've got another one for you later, too. I'll tell you about that. You'll get a kick out of.
Okay, so it's now the 6th inning. The Renegades are up. You got to go back out to the mound. You got to get 9 more outs. At any point in the 7th, 8th, and let's not even talk about 9th inning. We'll do that separate. At any point in the 7th, 8th, did you feel challenged, or were you strong, and did you breeze through it? And I guess Sean can reference the scorebook as well.
If I went straight off of memory, and again, this is 20 years ago, but I remember the last few innings feeling really, really good. And typically, I mean, you go out there and you get deeper into the game and you start wearing down pretty quick. But if you know something in the back of your mind, it has a possibility of happening. Basically at that point, it was obvious that something special was going, because every time I got back in the dugout, my entire team was on the other side of the dugout. Nobody was even looking at me. So, it was, if I didn't know before going in the dugout, all I had to do was look at my teammates and realize that something special was happening. So I think the energy and the realization that, I could go out there and make a little bit of history, that was playing into it, my emotions. And then also the fans, you could tell that the fans were getting behind me in a big way every time taking the mound, and how excited they were. So, you just start, I wouldn't say it was cruise control, but you start getting on this emotional high, and you start thinking that, start believing in yourself that this could really happen.
So just so you know, up until that game, I would always give at the end of the inning, I would give the runs, hits, and errors. And that night, I think I stopped in the 4th inning. And I have not done it since. So from the 4th inning of that game in the year 2000, I did not say, at the end of 4, so many runs. I did not say that. The only thing I said, and I said it in the 6th inning, I said, folks, look at the freaking scoreboard. That's all I said when you guys came off the field. And then there was like a murmur in the 7th inning when you guys were walking off the field, and we went to God Bless. No, we didn't go God Bless America in those days. We did Take Me Out to the Ball Game. But I haven't done it since, Doug. So from that day on, I have not done runs, hits, errors. because I was not going to ruin your night, and I haven't done it since.
So so we changed history there.
There you
That's
go.
what you're telling me.
And
it tells you something else too, Zols. There was a tradition at Dutchess Stadium, especially that season, to get out early and beat the traffic. Well, I didn't see any seats empty after the sixth inning, which usually happened back then, but it didn't that night.
And it was a packed house that night. So, Sean, I'll ask you one more thing before we get to the ninth inning, and then I actually want to go batter by batter.
Yeah.
I'll ask this question to you, then I'll ask Eric one more question, and then you do inning by inning, the last inning. Was there any defensive play in that game that you starred that something was made that was special for an out, or was it just a ho-hum game other than the ball being hit to Doug and making that play and erasing that guy at third?
Well, there was in the seventh inning, Doug walked the number 2 batter and got out of it with a double play. So that was huge. It was still 1-0 at that time. So when you get that late in the game, any base runner is a little bit scary. But, he bounced off that walk to Ron Acuna. And John Wilson came up, the cleanup hitter yet, and grounded into a double play. So that was huge.
Did you say Acuna?
Yeah, Ron Acuna. Yep.
Wow.
I did say that.
Isn't he related to somebody?
I'm not sure. I may be.
I thought it was the guy in the big leagues. All right, never mind. The young guy.
The name sounded familiar when I read it too.
All right. So anyway, let's get to Eric. At this point, as the clubby, there's no way you're doing anything in the clubhouse to get ready for the boys to come in with a meal, with laundry, or anything like that. You are obviously watching the game. Where did you watch the game from that point?
Just outside the bullpen, near grounds crew. It was kind of like a ritual that I had. I would just kind of go out, see what's going on, just in case guys, still needed stuff, from me or whatever. And once I realized what was going on, it was just kind of like, all right, staying put, not going anywhere because something special is happening right now.
Was Hubby out there with you?
Yeah, Hubby was usually around there with his crew. We always just kind of hung out over there. And
hey, Morgan,
yeah, Eric, the whole gang usually hung out there.
Morgan, can you unmute Hubby for a minute? Hubby, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Do sign language until you come up. You got it? All right. So you're a baseball guy. Always have been a baseball guy. I believe you were playing with us in that Poughkeepsie League that year. When did you notice? When did you think it was special? And how did you handle?
I remember watching it on the gate with Eric, just sitting there watching the whole game. I can remember the whole view as you guys go to your story because me and Eric are right down the right field line. So I had a really good view of the action that was to come.
All right. So for those who don't know, that's Tom Hubmaster. He was our groundskeeper in 2000. He's back with the ball club now. All right. So Sean.
Yes, sir.
Top of the ninth. Go from the first batter right through, and then please let's discuss the hiccup in detail and who perpetrated the hiccup.
Okay. All right. Well, the batting order in that ninth was 9-1-2. And Joel Zaragoza, the number 9 hitter, the second baseman, flew out to right. Chris Basak came up. He was the shortstop. You're going to love this, Sauls. Struck out 2-3.
Yeah.
So, in other words, Alex made the throw there. And I'm going to give you another number. Of the 10 strikeouts Doug got, 5 of them were strikeout 2-3s.
Really?
So Alex actually made 5 pretty good throws to first that night.
So what you're saying is Doug's stuff was so nasty, Alex had trouble handling it.
He had a busy night back there. He really did. And then, of course, came the big one with Jeff Duncan. The center fielder came up. And, well, we all know what happened there.
Describe it in detail, please.
Okay. I will do my best without cracking up. The ball's in the dirt again. Alex fielded it pretty well. Stepped out in front of the plate. You're a catcher's holes. That's what you're supposed to do. But what he didn't do was throw a BB to first. He threw a dart, and it went right over Nate Kalp's head. And that's when Bedlam ensued because 18 guys from the Renegades bullpen were running in there to congratulate the no-hitter guy, and now they're all dancing around trying to not touch the baseball. and you just had bedlam. I mean, it was craziness. Meanwhile, Jeff Duncan is running the bases. And if it's not for Erwin Centennial, the second baseman, running out to the right field fence to pick up the ball and get it back in, he's going to score. So what you wind up with it now is a man on third and 2 out. And
so Doug, another thing historical, when it happened, I actually said on the PA, "Are you effing kidding me?" I didn't fill out the word. I said it exactly like that. I couldn't believe my eyes.
Neither
Like,
could we.
are you effing kidding me? And he turns around, he looks at the PA booth like, "Dude, are you kidding me? You're a catcher. You should know better." I'm like, "Come on, man. It's a no-no. You got to be kidding me." I'm saying this on the PA.
Oh man, yeah, I do remember that part like it was yesterday. So the reason that there were so many putouts from my catcher Marconi to the first baseman was because, remember, I said my curveball was really good that night. So I would get ahead of hitters, and every single time I would get ahead of them, I would go to that curveball, and it was a curveball in the dirt that he would end up blocking. It was a swing through pitch, and then he'd throw it to first base. So I literally had that hitter set up exactly like I've been setting up hitters the entire game. I was waiting to drop that curveball and execute it. And so when I threw the pitch, I remember throwing the pitch. And when you throw a pitch, you know it's a good pitch, right? I threw the pitch. I knew it was perfect. And I saw the swing and miss. And so as soon as that happened, I remember this like it was yesterday. As soon as that happened, I was dropping to a knee, taking my hat off, like basically saying a prayer, like I was so excited that this really happened. And I go to take my hat off, and I look down to the first baseline. I see the ball airmailed over my first baseman and out. And so all I see after that is John Benedetti, and I think it was Terry McCormick were two guys in the bullpen. Both of them had to jump clear over the baseball so they wouldn't touch it in play. And I remember the base runner got all the way to third base. My second baseman, Centeno, threw the ball in, and the guy was rounding third. It was a close game. He was rounding third. And at that point, I wasn't so much worried about the no-hitter as I was worried, like, hey, we might lose this game if this guy scores. And so we ended up stopping him at third base. And, I had to get back on the mound and make another pitch.
Yeah, that was
All
something.
right, so let's talk about that. You think you get a no-hitter. The team thinks you have a no-hitter. The fans think you have a no-hitter. And then it's a Chinese fire drill around the bases. How do you collect yourself? And I don't remember, did Silvestri or Duffy come out of the dugout to talk to you at that point, or did you just gather yourself and finish off the next hitter?
No, I'm pretty sure Duffy came out to talk to me. And it was one of those like, hey, you got to get this guy, or we got to get you out of this game. And so I knew it was one of my last hitters, or probably the last hitter of the night for me. And my curveball, again, had been working really well, but I didn't want to mess around. I didn't want to fall behind. And I knew he was a really good hitter. I think it was Acuna. I believe it was, but
It was.
I knew it was their three.
It was.
Three-hole,
It
right?
was a good
Three-hole hitter.
Yep, it was a
Yep. And so I remember throwing a fastball to him, and I said in my mind that I thought I had a better chance of getting the guy out with a curveball, but I didn't want to fall behind. I just wanted to go right at him. And in the back of my head, I just said, you know what? If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And I just let a fastball rip and popped him up to our third baseman. And as soon as he got underneath it, he called it. I was like, oh, my God, please make this catch, because I don't think I can throw another pitch.
And as I remember, he actually came up the third base line, went to his knees, and caught the ball.
Yeah.
With two
on
hands.
his knees.
Yep,
Yeah,
with
he did.
two hands.
What's
To
that?
be very safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. And that's when the party ensued, man. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was amazing.
All right, so I think Morgan has some pictures of that. Morgan, do you want to share your screen now and show that to folks of the celebration and Doug in the here you go. So there he is, looking big and mean. There's the
Yep.
scoreboard.
Look at that. Oh, gosh.
Wow.
Yeah. How about that? You could just tell I was exhausted right there.
Dude, you couldn't brush your teeth the next day with your right arm.
Oh my God. It was hilarious. Yeah. I don't think I slept a minute that night. I was so excited about what happened. And, I went through there, and actually I went into the next game and went 5 no-hit innings in the next game, I believe. And, I remember Duffy, my pitching coach, was telling me after like the third inning, he's like, hey, you got a no-hitter going. just because he's like, he knew there was no chance of going 2 no-hitters in a row. He's like, hey, you got no hitter going. Keep it up, buddy.
All right, so first of all, we appreciate the history and the fact that it's something that we can talk about 20 years later. And I do remember your response when I said, hey, yo, Doug, it's 20 years. You want to come on and talk about it? You go, dude, am I really that old now?
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you think I feel if it's 20 years ago?
Oh my goodness.
You were a player, and I'm still there, and you've had a major league career, and now you're a broadcaster. So it's one of those moments where we can point back, and honestly, it was a terrible team. In all honesty, it was not a good team. It was the year after we won a championship. But we had one night that we can always talk about and always point to, and we thank you for that. And we wanted to bring on some special guests. We did try to get a hold of Marconi, and he ignored me.
Oh, did he?
Because he knows I would have made fun of him. I would have still hammered him all these years later. Because my heart did skip a few beats. And listen, you did what a professional pitcher does. You blocked out the nonsense. You got back on the mound. You used your muscle memory to do exactly what you're being paid to do. Go get the next guy. Even though it was their best hitter, you went and you got him. And it's a night. Again, we'll call you when it's 25 years and when it's 30 years. We'll keep bringing you back every 5 or 10 years. And because you're a piece of Renegades history along with those 4 championships. You're right there with all of those as well.
Oh, I love it, man. I want to do this as much as you guys are willing to let me on air. I have so much fun remembering all this. And give me 1 second. I'm in my office right now. Give me 1 second. I want to show you a piece of memorabilia that I have in my office.
Souls, while we have a second, can we bring Rob Adams in? He has a fact about Ron Acuna that he just texted me.
So
Rob
Morgan,
Adams.
can you mute our current radio broadcaster?
Hey
Great to
guys,
see you,
how are
partner.
you?
Great to see you.
How are
partner.
you, partner? It's good to see you too. Zols, good to see you. I did a little research. Ronald Acuna Sr., who was a part of that game, was on the Pittsfield Mets. That is Ronald Acuna Jr.'s father.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There you go.
You got it, Zols. You knew it. You got it.
Might be a correlation right there.
Well, his son
Although now I feel really old because I was pitching to
because his son is a stud. That kid can play.
you know what? I could have done without that stat now. I was excited at first, but now I don't know. Now I feel really, really old. Oh, man.
All right, Doug, so you got something better than the baseball?
I do. So, Eric, hey, good seeing you, man. I hadn't seen you in forever. I want to show you something that I have. So this right here looks like a normal Budweiser, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had 9 of these left in my locker in a bucket on ice when I was done, and after the whole team showered me with beers. And the reason there was 9 of these waiting for me is that there was one for every no-hit inning I threw, right? And so this is an original. This was in the bucket. This represented the 9th inning, and I still have it with me in my office today. So that's one thing I got. And then
I wouldn't recommend trying to drink it now, though.
Oh, it's still full. And then just to show you guys, I still got this. Well, I had that. I do keep one of the balls from the game in my office. So obviously it was a special night for me.
It was a game ball, right?
It was a game ball. It still has a scuff on it. So it was probably one of those curveballs in the dirt that I was making Marconi block.
So you're saying you scuffed the ball? Is that what you're saying? He had welts for weeks. So again, first of all, I want to thank all of our special guests. Usually we've never had this many people on one of our broadcasts that we've gone to, but I knew that it was going to be different. Coming up on Friday, we're going to talk to Albie, who's now with the San Francisco Giants organization. He was a manager for 1 year. That's Friday night at 7 o'clock. And again, Doug, for real, I can't thank you enough because it's one of those moments that I look back on and I remember it vividly. Then I remember the year you came back for the victory lap and how well received you were by our fans, because our fans have long memories and they remember that night, as do all staff and for being time and take you up on it. We will go to you again.
Absolutely. You know what? I would love to make a trip up there and just see the stadium again and reminisce. So, look, anytime you guys would like to have me on, or anytime I can do anything for you, I love it. It was a special year for me, and it was a special game for me. So, thank you guys for having me on.
All right, everybody, we appreciate the fact that you tuned us in again. We hope you enjoyed it. We're going to do it again on Friday at 7 o'clock.